Very good evening to everybody and welcome to the Gift of Truth and SA Jural Common Law Education Sessions. We're very grateful as always that you've joined, and we welcome all the beautiful souls, the community leaders and the traditional leaders that are joining this evening. And together we are learning to co-create our new and abundant Southern Africa. The date today is Monday, the 26th of February, 2024. And the topic being covered this evening is Stand on Land and learning how to stake your claim. Our educator this evening is Karen. Karen, thank you always in advance for the incredible effort and energy that you put into the educational sessions. We have all come to know that knowledge is power and the truth is setting us free. I'm just going to read in our disclaimer. As we step into living in private as men and women in the land jurisdiction, we comprehend that there should be no disclaimer, as each and every interpretation and overstanding of anything and everything that we as living souls experience is unique. The responsibility is our own as how we use this educational material. Everyone reading these pages, watching this video, and listening to the audio has enough wisdom to follow their own course. The choice is yours and yours alone. Before we continue, I'd just like to get 3 small admin things out of the way. The first one is a request to please keep your microphones on mute and your video cameras switched off. We will open the floor to questions and answers as soon as the presentation is finished. We also request people to please keep the questions and answers on the topic. And then also with regards to privacy, we really do respect your privacy, and we would like to ask if you would like to share your email address with us. Please send it in a direct message to either myself. Another request is we are all volunteers and everything that we are doing is coming out of our pockets. Sometimes the pockets run a little bit empty. So we're just going to remind everybody, if there is anybody in a position to assist with donations, we really do appreciate and welcome donations, no matter how big or small. Remember, we are setting about co-creating our parallel system, which is basically people's governance. So it's people doing it by themselves, and it's us all working together to set this up. So every little bit helps. On that note, we're going to open up the floor and begin the session. Karen, are you ready to begin?
I am. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for being here. We're so glad that there's so many joining us, because tonight I've packed it in, because things are moving fast. As you can see, people are going in circles, foreclosures are speeding up. There's a lot of mobilization, and with the voting coming up, sure, lots of things going on. So I hope that we're all going to pack it in tonight, because I'm touching on quite a lot of serious subjects. It's very difficult with once a week, because this I've taken, I think, 4 subjects and tried to squeeze it into one. So it's a challenge to try and get it in so that you can get the solid basics. And the notes, folks, we were going to try and organize something else. But these notes try and keep, even if I were you, I'd get them printed in hard copy if you can afford to, and just keep them in sequence as you go along, because it's an educational book by the time the year is up. So tonight, stand on land and stake your claim. I've been known to always say a man who doesn't stand on the land cannot make a claim. And with a claim, we don't write letters, we don't do dear sirs. We stake our claims and we make declarations and we send notices. So it's a different stance. So we're going to go into these subjects tonight. Made it also beautiful, and your heading was beautiful tonight. Thank you. So here I go again, standing on the land. So claim back your life and estate. Your estate is your business, as we explained last week. It's your capital letter name. Your birth certificate is your estate. And from that spot, a trust has been created, and there's true value in that whole scenario. Your whole birth certificate is where the value lies, and it's who you actually are in the world of commerce. So your name is where the true value is. The last 3 weeks of notes, you'll see it. Now, this is the big one that I was going to put off, and it's the claim of the revocation of election to be a taxpayer, which is not a man, and it's not a woman, and it's not generally a normal South African citizen either. So we're going to concentrate quite heavily on the tax tonight, and you're going to get a little template that you can all work around. Claim your registrations and licenses every time you appoint you register anything or you get a license for anything. You've given over your property to the Crown Corporation under copyright. And that's why we did copyright last week, so that you override the Crown copyright, all capital letter name. You take hold of the capital name, you take hold of your birth certificate, and you take control of it. So claim your unalienable rights and self-governance. Be a fish out of water, actually, because we've got to come out of the sea. Even if we've got to morph into something else that's not a fish. So we're going to start off with the whole concept, which many of you know, but to put it into a nutshell for the processes that we're moving with further down. So there is a ship. It's actually called the British Isles, the ship. And it doesn't exist. It's not a real ship. So the ship that is owned by a corporation named the Crown Vatican. And on the ship is the captain, the passengers, and the deckhands. The majority on the ship at present are the deckhands. They're employed by the ship. Those are your government employees. You'll find out that you're all government employees until you emancipate. So you are the ones we're the deckhands, the slave ones that get whipped. To do the slave work, that's the citizens, the captain is employed by the Crown with the skipper to whip the Crown deckhand slaves and enforce rules and penalties and put you into the hold. That's the prison. You can choose to be a passenger or a deckhand. And that's the position we're in now. We're all deckhands, us who have emancipated and got off our voters' roll. We're no longer deckhands, but we're still wearing the deckhand uniform. So we've got to battle through it. And most of these government officials that are dealing with us, they don't even know what's going on, most of them. So you have to educate them through your notices, get quite heavy, stand your ground, stake your claim, and make declarations. So the operation of every single claim in a nutshell is, in shipping language, the chartered vessel, South Africa, took on cargo, the SA citizens and people, mortgaged, that means bonded that cargo. Think about it's on a ship. Imagine it yourself on the ship. So you mortgaged and bonded because you have value towards the future because of our energy. And to the hilt, to pay for the voyage. Use the credit of the people, then dump that cargo, us, SA people, over the railing and into the seas of commerce. To collect on the insurance, because every time you make a parcel over the road, you send one over the sea, you have to insure it. So they want to collect on the insurance because they dumped us into the sea and they basically put us on a birth certificate that we're dead. So the insurance is social welfare, SASSA. Then they came back to the point of dumping for a salvage operation at Admiralty lien, a maritime lien, which is another bond. And that's what makes you the bond slave, is they liened your birth certificate because they said you were lost at sea. And there's a law called habeas corpus. If all of you have done your emancipation, I've advised people you can use one single page of each emancipation document for many of these notices. Once you go through these educations here, go back to your emancipation and study each page. They're all mostly one pages. First one is welcomed into a foreign jurisdiction, which is the sea, by the host nation, the Crown Vatican, and our government, of whom though it's occupying army, United Nations army, peacekeepers, all these people, extended its hospitality to a foreigner. They extended their hospitality to us, the landman, upon registration of the birth event. And per the custom, the host nation, the Vatican Crown, provided a vessel. So they created a fictional vessel. So now we've become a vessel, the straw man name, whose cargo, so Betty Ann Boop in all capital letters would be written on the side of the ship. So that's what your name is, you're a ship. Whose cargo, that's us and our assets now, is destined for treasury. That means they're going to turn us into an equity because we're going to carry on working and play. We're going to pretend that we're dead. And an indemnity receipt guaranteeing care and maintenance of the vessel, that's us, you, by the host nation, the Crown Vatican vassal, in order that his burden be light. So the Crown vassal, who is supposed to be our trustees, they employ the South African government as a kind of a quasi administrating body. So they trade your live birth certificate on the stock market. Sorry, I'm going to just go back to is destined for treasury, the equity. I don't know which lesson it is, but I did one on equity. I'll remind you, because equity stands, if you look at our tribal structures and you go back before the colonialism happened, their entire system was equitable. So they would never stay in one piece of land and let the goats eat it into erosion. They would move on to another spot, or you'll get a little image of equity down the road because it's a higher law than common law. So when common law gets heavy and you can't come to a remedy, equity law will always take over. And equity is the law of trust. So I'm just introducing that because next week we're going to start on trusts and you'll see the whole world. There is entire structure. We're still looking at debtor and creditor, but it's basically everything is run through trusts. So an indemnity receipt guaranteeing care maintenance to the vessel, you by the house, nation, crown, Vatican vassal, in order that his burden be light. They trade your life birth certificate on the stock market. That's what turns you into chattel, that's your value that's being traded all the time. So now the same foreigner, you, is shanghaied at birth into this foreign jurisdiction of the sea, original nation, to the imagination. You see how they play with words? I kid you not. I put these things in for you guys because the entire thing is a spell, a witch's spell. I'm not kidding. So you're going to end up finding out that you are inside a video game already, which is what the Matrix film was all about. But it's not fiction for the man who's breathing. You're caught up in this fiction, and can you get out of the Matrix? So all of our whole movement right now is how to get out of the Matrix. You can play in it and out of it. You can't get out of it totally unless you give up everything and head for the mountains and get someone to use their bank accounts and live off the land, which we might all be doing in the near future anyway, folks. So now the same foreigner you is shanghaied at birth into this foreign jurisdiction, conscripted, just like the army, into citizenship. Citizenship is part of the military. South Africa, or whatever nation, as one can only become a citizen and not otherwise, given a christened vessel. You know how they do the bottle of champagne for the ship when it launches? That's a christening. It's all spells. It's a vessel. All caps name is the name of the ship, your vessel. Then sent to battle across the seas, capitalism equals the worshipper of religion. Religion. Do you see how the names and words are used? and left for dead. So the collateral damage and casualty of war, that's what we basically become part of. Then a presumption of death exists because the infant, a foreign descendant estate, keep that word in mind, because that's when someone's missing. And they're saying it's a dying estate. And normally when someone has died, your estate will be kept by somebody for a period of 7 years. And if you don't pitch, the government takes all your assets. So you're coming in with your emancipation at 21 and say, hey, I'm alive, actually. It's called habeas corpus. And I'm claiming all my assets back. That is what we are in the process of doing. And they don't want to let go of them. And they don't really want to let go of all of us, because without our energy, they're nothing. They've got nothing without us. So then a presumption of death exists because the infant, the foreign descendant estate, your birth certificate, is missing from beyond the seas. Under international maritime law, via the Setu V Acts of 1540, 1666, and 1707. That's the whole birth certificate fraud that's working on a global level. It's actually, it's slave trade. It's no different. It's a slave trade. We're all slaves still, just like we were. We're just not using our arms and legs in the same way, but we've been beaten and doing, it's all the same. Now comes the enforcement of a maritime lien under Admiralty law. SARS or any maritime lien, theirs is the whole lien on you, is only valid if one is dead. And your birth certificate says you're dead. Dead have no power over the living. That's the descendant estate, is a dying or a dead man. So actually it's more, dissident means dying. So they can kind of get away with using your signature for the dead man and alive. I mean, it's perverted. So there is a claim in a nutshell. If one does not provide proof of life, the infant's still using the estate and trust. So that there means every time you flash your ID card or whatever, you're a dying baby on that card. So you're doing business, you're setting up bank accounts, you're buying cars, you booking yourselves into hospitals, everything, with a dying baby certificate. That's actually what it is. So it's an estate trust. It's a missing child's trust. Then the one before the court, corporation, is presumed to be an executor. So if they take you to court, the attorney generally is an executor, but they've turned you into the executor of the descendant estate. You're your own executor of your own dead estate. That's how they capture you in the courts. So you become a descendant estate and the trustee of the citizen public trust. So for those who don't know, we've discussed this in full. The entire South African government and all its wealth is still in the unincorporated South Africa under the common law. And this estate that they don't let you on of the living man is the wealth of South Africa divided amongst all its people. Because we're not supposed to be paying any debts, because there are only debts, but we'll get to that when we get further down. So what is presumed to be an executor of a descendant dying estate name and is just a trust. Anyone can operate, but you are trustee as the presumed citizen. You are supposed to be the beneficiary of all the South African real assets in equity. That means real assets. So we're actually the beneficiaries, but they've turned it around and made us the trustees. So we've got to pay the bills. Trustees pay the bills. The beneficiaries sit back and enjoy life while the trustees make sure everything's fine. The beneficiary would be the passenger on a ship, and the trustee would be the captain. And you can see how they've switched it around. They've made us deckhands. So, and thus liable under SARS for the tax imposed as if one were the executor, the administrator of the dead. So that's important that I put that there so you can understand what the process we're going to do with tax. So here's a little restaurant handkerchief picture of a basic trust so that you can get the basic structure, and you're going to get notes and things to hold onto it. It's a very nicely put down one. So the beneficiaries are the equitable owners of all assets in a trust. So the trustees are the fiduciaries. Our government are supposed to be our trustees. And as you can see here, we'll go down, the person who's given the power. So all title deeds and registrations and licenses are held by the trustee, supposedly for our well-being and our protection. But as you know, they turn it on you. So it's the person who's given the power and all the responsibility to manage and administrate charities, trust funds, wills, pensions, and other things. Same as a house, a home family trust, same as a government trust. So our person, our manager, so the actual trustee is the Vatican Crown in this situation. Then you get to this little man to manage and administrate. That's the government, who the Vatican employed to do the administration for the South African Trust. And this is where all our money and everything sits, and they don't let us get to it. So here how it works, the trustee manages and distributes funds. Right down here in the left-hand corner is the settler. He's the donor. He's the man who sets up the trust. He owns the assets, and he's saying, okay, I don't really want to look after them anymore. I'm going to appoint a trustee, and he's going to basically look after me as well, while he looks after my offspring, my beneficiaries, who are the South African people. So this trust over here, you can see it ends up with the treasury, and the donor settlor, that is all the assets. So that would be your mother and father in each individual's case. But the donor settlor is actually in the South African Public Trust. It's us and our ancestors. And there's that trust building in the middle that looks more like a government perch or something. So that's the treasury. So that big trust sits in the treasury, but it's all of ours. And I can tell you it is being so raped by forging and using our signatures of dead men, because they're not accountable. Dead men don't speak. And they can't have us go into a court. They can't have us anywhere if we're alive and kicking. We've got to do en masse with alive and kicking, because they're going to run. They're going to head for the hills. And you can see it's all starting to happen. Governments are starting to drop, which is not actually the best thing, folks, because if you really look, it's not the government doing it to us. And they hype us on with the ANC and the whole voting thing. It's the Vatican sitting at the top. These, these are just the handlers. This is a criminal. All the government structures on earth is just a criminal operation, nothing else. Of slave trade, human trafficking, child sex trafficking. City of London finances it all. That's your court system, is financing all this terrible stuff. So I say the insanity has to stop. So there you have it. The presumption of death is the only thing wrong with the system. So folks, that's where you've got to sit and concentrate. This presumption that you're dead, I'm back. That's your emancipation. But now you've got to act on it and you've got to live it. So, but since it all operates on paper and translates into the real world with real ramifications, then that is a big problem. But it is a problem that we can fix. So just have to accept one has a name and one has a number, but owns neither. Then, since both name and number have vested within the one, the estate also revests within the one, as the infant is no longer dead or missing from beyond the seas, which automatically invalidates all maritime liens. So all those slave bonds they put on you, every time you vote, it's a bond on you. Every time you do a transaction, it's they create a lien on you. If you don't pay your rates and taxes, the municipalities already put a lien on your house so that they can take it. So when you do this whole process, all those bonds have gone. They disappear. So from beyond the seas, which automatically invalidates all maritime liens. Maritime law is for the deckhand. And when you get into Admiralty law, you're up towards the captain, the passengers, and the skippers and people. So as those are just salvage rights and is of age of majority, your sui juris is when you can claim your birth certificate back. Sui juris biblically is 21. Some countries do 18. I think ours is 18. I keep forgetting that one. And now you operate in pure equity, meaning real tangible assets, not this licensing. If you own a boat, why must you license the bloody thing? If you own a car, why must you license it? What for? You own the road, you own the tar, you own the buildings, you own the everything. But right now, you don't. So this process is to free you up from and take hold of all your assets. And they are now the usufruct. Usufruct means the usufruct is the best position to be in the world because you get to use everything with no responsibilities and everyone around you must look after you. And you are the naked owner with disposal rights over all the estates of the earth. Just like the peace treaty demands, and I'm talking about my mind slipped. I'll tell you just now because we're getting to it. It's becoming a secured party creditor, which means that you then own all your assets. Why do we pay tax when we're already the creditor? So everybody, before you emancipate and before you do a few other things that you're going to have to fill yourself in on, you're a debtor to the system. A debt biblically is called a sin. So you're born a sinner in the system. You can't get out, but you can free yourself up. And if you go to the biblical text, the whole story is how to free yourself out of the system, which is maritime law. Jesus walked on water. He overcame the laws of the sea and the merchant ships. Merchant ships and trade go back 8,000 years. That's recorded history of the law merchant, and we're still using it today. So becoming a secured party creditor is staking your equitable claim. You're claiming all your assets back and your name. Last week, folks who are here tonight and haven't got the notes, last week was your trademark copyright name, which is far more powerful than anybody knows. I'm just trying to be stable, and then we're going to maybe next week start doing the first workshop to complete your copyright agreement, and you'll get templates, and it'll all go slowly and explain it, and you fill it out, and then from there you'll do the next process. So you're going to the secured party creditor. You are in declaration one of those by removing yourself off the voters roll and your citizenship removal, your emancipation. But to become the proper and to function the secured party creditor, to do your bills of exchange, you need to do a few other things. And it starts with your copyrighting your name with charges. So it is staking your equitable claim of reality, real assets of equity, and not pieces of paper like marriage licenses, certificates, crown, copyright registrations. So last week I keep saying, oh, you must look at the other image. I think it would be a good idea if I just put the equity image in every single week, because that image basically sums up the world, if you really look at it. We've got to have equality, the equality of human rights. What is a human? It's a sea monster. The entire United Nations is a farce, the whole thing. They own nothing. They only own documents. They're a communist organization because they don't have destination and they can't own land. So if you look at the Maritime Admiralty law and why trusts are set up, because the sea is not on our land where we live. So to bring it in, they had to create all this fiction to pretend we're on a ship. I set an image up on one of the Zooms where the huge courthouse, I can't remember, it's in America somewhere. If you look at it from above, from a drone shot, it's an entire ship. You can see the port and starboard. You enter in on that side, the passenger and the slaves enter on the other side. I mean, these people are mad, but we're living in a video game. You play on the land, it's the same as Monopoly. You don't own your house, you don't own your cars, you own nothing. So Klaus Schwab was right, but he didn't say you're gonna own nothing, you already own nothing. And you're going to claim it all back, and you're going to protect it in a small trust, which is very, very basic to set up. Takes half an hour just to do your basic trust, and then you start learning how to self-govern and do your own paperwork and keep yourself clean. I've used this before, and it can show you the extent of the system and one name and what all of these things. Here's the name fraud. It's called personage and barratry. It's treason. It's a very serious crime. And I think it's the president of El Salvador. If none of you saw his speech from the CPAC, I highly recommend that everyone finds it and watches it, because it's starting to happen on a governmental level. And there was a president of El Salvador saying, we're going to get rid of this cabal. The crime syndicate. So it's coming out on mainstream now, quite big time. So there's going to be mobilization. You know, we're going to have to change the bank system, but you're going to change yourself first. So you can see just in the name John Quincy Adams, that way it's a living South African endowed with all his natural rights. Then you can see here's your Christian name, but they've already taken it. They've now turned your Christian name under municipal jurisdiction into a foreign citus trust used in commercial shipping. There's your CAPS name, a foreign estate trust, a public transmitting utility. Then you see John Q. Adams is a public foundation. John Q. Adams is a cooperative. John Q. Can you see what they've done with your name? You have to claim it back. You won't know what's going on. I mean, I got a document the other day, and immediately I saw I was a foreign pauper forbidden to own land. So I was sent a court document in J.Q. Adams's name. And I was a pauper forbidden to own land, and the court case is about land. You see the level and extent of this absolute horror. So there are dozens of different potential meanings that can be arbitrarily assigned to anyone's name and used to represent radically different entities. In a verbal conversation, we can talk all day long about someone or something named John Quincy Adams, and which John Quincy Adams of what kind of what John Quincy Adams will never be known, except from the context of the conversation. Hence, I said, I'm a pauper who can't own land, and that's the conversation they're having with me. But on paper, the use of such a system instantly defines what or whom is being talked about, if you know the system. So this is what the lawyers, bankers, and politicians have used to enslave you. It is a crime known as personage, by arbitrarily creating an estate trust, that's your birth certificate, named after you, and claiming to own this thing, this creature. So if you look in Black's Law Dictionary, a human means a sea monster. And then if you look at sea monster, a sea monster is a fiction. So they just keep going. I really think, and I've read many, many accounts, that when the Black's Law Dictionary and when most of this law is written, they are tripping on nothing less than 6 different hallucinogenic drugs. So if you look how Silicon Valley was set up, it was set up on hallucinogenic drugs. They do mushrooms every Friday, they do microdosing all day, and then they come up with this fiction that we all believe in, and they pump us this narrative. So it's a crime known as personage by arbitrarily creating an estate birth certificate trust. So they are falsely claimed to own you and your assets, to literally buy and sell you on stock exchanges, ship you out of ports and tax you for doing things you've never done. After all, there is no law against enslaving an estate trust, is there? Or arresting a slave, or charging a tax on importing revenue to Timbuktu. Hand in hand with personage comes barratry, the crime of knowingly bringing false claims into a court. So what happens every day all across South Africa when charges are brought against the estates of dead men who are standing right in front of the judge and jury? That's why you've got to get a lawyer, because he's got a crown copyright to be able to speak in the court. We're not allowed to speak and they can't hear us because we're dead. Barratry is a crime that is appropriately named after the Bar Association. So all these advocates and attorneys, they do blood oaths and swear to the bar. I don't even know if half of them are knowing what they're doing, actually. But they're basically, it's just it's common criminality, nothing more. It's the same as Bugsy Malone. It's the same as any criminal syndicate. The entire world is running under crime. And don't think BRICS is going to come and save you. I think they're under the same criminal system, quite frankly. Nothing's going to save you other than yourself. And this is the hard part. Don't look outside. Just look to all your community and everyone around you to help each other out, because there's a revolution broiling. And it's either going to change by a revolution getting to a point, or we're going to have to set up our own banks, because the banks own the world. The bank is the government. The bank is the crown copyright. So look, by the way, our courts in this country are crown courts. They're crown banks. They're crown schools. We're living as British subjects. So we're still part of the whole colonial system. And if you think there's black, white, colored, and all of that, that's the biggest joke of all. Just don't even think about race anymore. There's a crime syndicate against every single sentient living being. It doesn't matter what color or creed you are, frankly. So the separation between this whole nonsense that we've all played from apartheid to whatever, it's all a fiction. I mean, this is how it's a quick, you're going to wake up and realize, my God, my neighbor, I don't actually have these problems that I thought I had. And I'm not scared of my neighbor anymore because I can't be. I'm going to have to dance with the man and start marching on banks or doing what we have to do. So look at the front page of any lawsuit that has been filed in South Africa for the past 70 years. And there you will have proof in your hand of both personage and barratry being committed against the individual peoples falsely named as defendants. They are being deliberately confused with foreign estate trusts. How can a dead piece of paper be a defendant? Can you see this? It's not any different to pornography. I promise you, it's commercial pornography. So they are being deliberately confused with foreign estate trusts merely named after them, and they are suffering the crimes of both personage and barratry. Spread this explanation of the situation throughout the world. Take it to the highest ranking police officers, to the sheriffs, to the deputies, to the traffic cops, to the mayors, to the politicians responsible, to the bankers who have seized your bank accounts under the same false pretenses. Folks, we got to start getting out there. I'm warning you, it's hotting up, and it's hotting up around the banks, and they want to bring this digital currency in, which is, I've studied it in the last week. It is the worst slave system that you'll ever know. It's very bad. So don't think your digital currency is the answer. It's most certainly a full slave system. If Bitcoin survives, I will be shocked. And so most people who really know about Bitcoin right now, this is not financial advice, but Bitcoin is based on, it's on fiat currency. It's on a fictional currency in the system, and you've got a fictional wallet. So I don't think we're going to eat Bitcoin either. So let's just look at the basic. What is a straw man? I like to call the straw man a ventriloquist. You know, the man with the little puppet who speaks those brilliant things. We're more of a ventriloquist because the puppet is dead, but the man speaks through him. Straw man concept came from the common law as just finding someone and who would prepare to lie as a witness, and he would always put a bit of straw into his shoe So while the lawyers were running around looking for someone to lie for them, they'd find a straw man. So the straw man would go into the court as a lie. And seeing that he did, they just turned dead man out at sea. So the straw man, as defined in Black's Law Dictionary, is upfront. I used a closer edition because you can see they change the dictionary all the time. Before it's a sea monster. So now the sea edition, 6th edition, is upfront. A third party, that's your estate trust, who is put up in name only to take part in a transaction. So it's a fictional creation. A nominal party to a transaction, one who acts as an agent for another for the purpose of taking title to real property, that's your straw man, and executing whatever documents and instruments the principal may direct respecting the property. Person who purchases property for another to conceal his identity of the real purchaser buyer, or to accomplish some purpose otherwise not allowed. So the straw man was created because the courts were doing illegal things. We've touched on the holder of due course was one of the first lessons of this year, but the importance of it. So I'll keep bringing it back so that you can just regurgitate it. It's basic. It's got to do, now we're moving into the bills of exchange. The holder in due course is, as you can see, we don't trade with gold and silver. So this whole perverted system is reliant on your license document. So when you go along and say, okay, Betty's going for a car license, there's a value in it for them because they've got this name and they've got a birth certificate trading on the stock market. And the more energy you put into it, the more it's going to make for them. So where every time you do a negotiable instrument, from your passport to your birth certificate to your ID document, it has commercial value for them. So when you go, for instance, when you buy a house, you make your offer to purchase, they draw up what do they got, a deed of, it's a conveyancing deed. They then, when you send it to the deeds office, by the way, it's not compulsory that you have to register any land. They can't force you because they're using a dead fiction. They then endorse your document and turn it into a monetary value. Your house, your car license, your fishing license, your gun license, everything is their money system. They don't want these fiat notes. They don't have a signature on them. They're worth nothing. And you're not even allowed to actually carry them around. It's against the law for us to have money in our pocket other than a coin that's not theirs. So the maker or the drawer is, say, the taxman, and then the payee or the bearer. Now that is the straw man. So the taxman sends a negotiable instrument, a bill, to the straw man. The straw man, he knows, this taxman knows the straw man owns nothing. But he wants the holder in due course to sign the document and get the straw man to give it back to the maker of the bill. That's a negotiable instrument, bills of exchange. But to be a holder in due course, which means you are the value of that document. The only way that they can use you for your value is to use your signature. So they trap you. The holder in due course is the living man, thinking that you are the pink payee or the bearer of the account. But actually, the taxman is jumping over the pink block and he's going to the green block because that holder in due course is what all the assets in South Africa are, the real assets, the equity. Normally, they'll just go to the pink block, the straw man, and you'll pay the bill out of your pocket, which is the holder in due course's hard-earned money, and fraudulently and illegally, you'll pay the bill to the taxman. So the truth be told, that this is actually a trust. So the maker, the drawer, the tax office or the municipality, whoever's sending you the bill, is actually making an offer to contract. It's not a bill, it's an offer to contract that goes directly to the holder in due course, the living man, and said, oh, you know, we're doing all your services and we're fixing the roads. Can you give permission to the payee, the straw man, to give us some of your public trust so that we can pay for the roads and things? So the government's not doing that. What they're doing is they're going to the straw man, they're making him pay the extra bill while they take that offer that's supposed to come from the green man and they go straight into the green man's account, your ID book, and they take it out of there. That's theft. That's treason. That's serious stuff that they're doing. So folks start walking around thinking, you little bugger, you're ripping me off. Hey, Mr. Kisvetter, who the hell do you think you are stealing my taxes and my money? Where we've been saying, oh, the tax man's after us, he's going to take me to court, which he will if you don't know how to play the game. So, or how not to play the game is even a better way. So you can see this is a very subtle little image, but the man holding the cup of tea, he's just holding the cup of tea. The man drinking the tea is the holder in due course. He's utilizing the asset. The other one's still holding. So the holder in due course, in a nutshell, is a concept that refers to the party, party, who holds an important and often negotiable document. That can be a court case, your tax document, anything. In this role, the holder can treat the document or the instrument as a source of money or payment method. So every bill they send you, you sign it, you've created money. Much more than your bill. So if, say, you've transferred your house for $1 million, by the time they've endorsed your title deed, you'll never, ever get your title deed. Because the only value in the world are your titles, and none of us hold any of them. So the whole mission is to get your titles back. But they are basically stealing everything and making us double pay. We're in a double pay system. You're not allowed to pay your debts with fiat currency. You can't pay a debt with fiat currency. So why are we doing it every day? Because we believed all this absolute nonsense. So the holder in due course is the one who holds the document that you're either going to sign. The defendant in a court case is the holder in due course, and nobody knows it. You're sitting there acting like a slave and we're terrified. You're holding the whole court case in your hand, and you can force, you make that bloody judge into the trustee that he's been paid to be, and the clerk becomes the administrator, and you hand them the court case and say, discharge the bill. I'm passing through. I'm just the vessel passing through. Bye. We've got to get to that point. It's all a farce. It's a fiction. So in this role, the holder can treat the document or instrument as a source of money or payment method, court summons and orders, tax bills, licenses, marriage rates, certificates. Not Joseph on the corner who is selling you a hamburger. It's this whole structure, and it includes corporations. We're going to have to do bills of exchange with them too, because I'd say 80% of them are running the world already. Governments are writing out their statutes and codes according to what Steve Bezos wants, or who's that pervert who makes injections? I can never remember his name. People that are perverts making injections, I can't remember their names. Bill Gates. Bill Gates.
Oh, they're all perverts.
Yes. So this concept of holder in due course, that's holding the power in your hands, can be translated into real world situations. According to the Uniform Commercial Code, which is the old law merchant, the holder in due course is the current owner. They have the right to sue for monetary damages. Here comes your copyright agreement in their own name. You are the holder of the value. So that bill is of enormous importance. But if you're not the creditor in the system and you haven't claimed your life back, and you haven't done your habeas corpus, and you haven't done your sui juris, which is your emancipation, you're not the holder of the value, the government. So if you're going to play bills of exchange, you've got to know what the debtor creditor and the system is, because things change. I think it was in 2015 that South Africa RSA Inc. reclaimed another bankruptcy. So they are on rolling bankruptcy, and we're all debtors in the system. So you are the holder of all the value in the whole world as breathing, living people, not this fiction structure, which is going to fall so hard, but we're trying not to fall too hard with it. So let's share the tax process. I wasn't going to do this, folks, and this can be done by so many thousands of people. I'm going to give it to you, but folks, just know there's a process around it, and you must know how to do your UPU process, which is the postal process. You've got to know how to do that so that it's all within the right structure. But funny enough, tax is one of the easiest things to get through, but they are the hardest when they come at you. But with the tax man, I must be honest, after the second and third time, my heart would pump in waiting for a mail to come through, a letter. I don't feel that way anymore. They can go to hell. So let's share the tax process for all to free yourselves from the unjust burden. Remember, it is your responsibility to research, as I can only guide you to the facts that you must rebut, as I am not giving you any tax advice. I'm just sharing in what I've learned and the experiences I have doing this. We are all together on a learning curve. But once you know what the tax office is, it's probably one of the easiest, because it's probably one of the most criminal aspects to it. And it's in your face. And the tax office has got nothing to do with us, in fact. So when you receive a tax notice, it is indeed a contract offer. Remember what I showed you with the pink, the green, and the blue box? It's actually not going to the straw man, even though they put the bill in the straw man's name. He's offering for your living man to please set this, to discharge, I mean, not discharge, pay this bill for them. And you go back and say, oh, okay, I'll set it off. They don't want you to do that because they want you to pay, and they're going to go and get the same amount out of the treasury, and they're going to use your endorsed signatured bill or your one that you paid to steal some money out of the public trust. Remember, there are just millions and millions of little trusts. Each living man in South Africa sits under an umbrella of how many people are in this country? Probably close on 60 million. So I think a third of South Africa is not registered, the clever ones, because it wasn't done for clever. So we've probably got 55 million little trusts that the government keeps tabs of, each one of us. And it's the trusts that they're going to tack and tag and trace, because they're not allowed to do it to a living man. And now can you see why they're trying to turn you into a half robot? Because anyone who's taken the injections, you are patented goods. So what's inside of you is a self-producing factory of goods that they want. So they've patented you. You have to protect yourself against patents for the people that have done injections. And there are very easy ways to protect yourself on a daily basis. If you have done injections, go into it and look how you do twice a month. You use the ivermectin program in your armpits, you rub a little on, and you can maintain your life pretty well. That was what I did before this. I used to counsel patients with weird illnesses because I was the weirdest of all of them. I had metal poisoning. So when you receive a tax note, it is indeed a contract offer that you are attempting to foist off onto you. They are. And if they address it to the UCC contract trust, your full capital man name, your birth certificate trust, using what appears to be your name in all capital letters, you are well advised to return it unopened. Return to sender, addressee not here. I've put this in here. You can cut and paste this. This goes on to any bill that's like, for instance, a municipality. I don't get services from the municipality, so I can afford to do this. So every municipal they send me, I just cut and paste this and I make it A4 size. So they get a whole page back. But there are better, you can do this for holding back a bit. But if you are dependent on the services from municipalities and things, you're going to have to follow through on the bills of exchange process once you know what you're doing. There are other things you can do to get out of paying bills, but they're going to switch your electricity off. I had right in the beginning, I had a client who they switched it off 3 times, and then you just send them a notice. I bothered to look at the acts. They're not allowed to cut any services off by law. So you send them the laws and they switch it back on, and next month they switch it off again. So we've got to get to the bottom of it. So depending on the variation of the name they use, the municipal corporation they are addressing might be a creation of the SA Department of Commerce. Oh, the CIPC, I've gone down that rabbit hole in the last 3 weeks. My God, it's criminal. That's creating companies. Whoa, very bad. They don't even put your birth certificate in the way most people do. They just put your bank account number in there. And CIPC, anyone with a CIPC company does not own their company in any way, nor do the shareholders. So just to let you know that. So that's why the Department of Commerce runs that show, or the South African, I think it's the Department of Transportation. That's the transmitting utility. So even when you're paying your tax bill, you're being transported. Remember, you're a vessel. They have to register you under the Department of Transportation. And that's run by the UPU who runs the world. And think about it. Why are you paying anything to drive on your own road? And why are you not owning your car? Why are you listening to anyone telling you what to do? We all want to not die on the roads, but those roads are ours. So why not? How can they fine you while you're riding on your own road? It's absolutely insane. So the Department of Transportation is, it sits at the top there as very, very bad. But in any event, the addressee is not at your house, not owned or operated by you, and you are not responsible for paying its employment or capital gains tax. When they say this is taxpayers' money, that is the biggest lie that has ever come across. There's no taxpayers' money being paid for anything in our country. It's paying off the elites overseas. And it's illegal. To pay your taxes is actually illegal. So because you have a fictional name and a non-specific meaning, that it is not a proper noun denoting any specific person, there is no obligation on your part to answer to it. And knowing what it is, you would be foolish to do so. So folks, let me tell you. The only reason they can tax you is when you file a return, because you're colluding. So if you can write back and say, I don't do returns. I've made a mistake all along. So to decline any tax notice misaddressed to you, also decline any offer to mischaracterize you as a taxpayer or a taxpayer, 2 different kinds of entities. A taxpayer is a foreign municipal corporation known as a UCC, a Universal Commercial Code contract trust under Maritime Admiralty law. So what happened in 1920 here in South Africa? We were one of the first countries to do it, by the way. We've always been the experimental country. Take a look at what happens in South Africa. We'll probably be the first to be mobilized. It always happens here first. We actually, if you look at and people understand the chakra system of the earth, South Africa sits at the belly. It's the gold. It's the color gold. And it's the actual thread of release. It's a powerful position to be in. So what happened in 1920 and the new Banking Act, Finance Emergency Act of 1931, which was no emergency, it was fake, was a colossal, artificially engineered emergency in which gold and silver were removed from the marketplace, and suddenly people had no gold or silver to actually pay a debt with. We lingered on till the 60s with, what do we call those? Pounds sterling. but we were already captured. It was the first corporation on earth was the Dutch East India Company. And you know who's running the earth today? The Dutch East India Company. Nothing's changed. Just blacks in this country thought that they were persecuted separately from whites, and whites thought that it's not. It's just living energy they're after. There's a film on Netflix called Taboo. It's very dark. It's done by that Guy Ritchie guy who makes very good films, very British, dark, but it'll show you it's the truth about the Dutch East India Company. And the interesting things and the voodoo that went on and rituals and spells. Oh my goodness, these people are weird. So as remedy, the governments accepted the obligation to pay all debts called a tax exemption. That's how it's supposed to be, folks. But because we were so far asleep, I'm not going to rely on tax exemption. And the gift I'm giving you tonight is a template that you'll start understanding the exemption is another trap until you've done your security agreement and you've placed a bond on your own name and you've claimed all your assets back. That's when you start operating on another level. And that's what a group of us are all finishing off now. I'm nearly finished mine. I've done part of the process, but we'll get into it. So your tax exemption, which you'll see, I'm going to call it and introduce you to another system, which is very powerful. So SARS and any tax assessors are responsible for providing you with a coupon. They're supposed to give you a coupon, which is a bills of exchange, like a check, and you're supposed to sign it and send it back. And that would be a discharge of the debt. A discharge means you're settling the bill now to be paid in the future. A debtor can only do that. When you have become a creditor in the system, once you've done your security agreement, we'll explain it, then you're not going to discharge anymore. You're going to settle the bill. From the public trust, which is where all the diamonds, golds, lands, we own the government, we own every building in this country, we own every courtroom. We own every piece of land. The rest is fiction, folks. I'm going to deliver this up as hard as I can because I'm a healthy anarchist. An anarchist right now is what we need. We need, people have been confused about what anarchy is. It's the only thing that will change the world. And it's not total, you get chaos to get order. So this coupon's supposed to be, you know how you sometimes get a bill where you can tear something off? It happens less and less, so maybe the young people here haven't seen something like that. But I remember them. I remember learning bills of exchange in standard 2, which would be grade 3 or 4, I think. This looks very much like the tearaway parts of a billing statement, the portion you are asked to detach and return with payment, demanding it and making them aware that you know, in this weird new world, your signature allows them to transfer credit to balance whatever debt you present for payment is sufficient. Whether it's for R1 million or just pennies, that negotiable offer to pay, offer to contract, once you put your signature on it, it's the document they want for the stock market. They don't play with money, they play with negotiable instruments with our signatures on it. That's their money. We play with monopoly money, they play with the title deeds of our entire lives. So that the only value to them are all our title deeds. Nobody owns titles, everyone's licensing because they own the title. And the majority of them, I think, sit with the Minister of Transportation. I am told that most of our birth certificates and our licensings are sitting in another country already. So anyway, your signature allows them to transfer, so R1 or just pennies. You have to endorse the coupon, that sign it. Endorse means sign. We use the whole bill because we didn't get the coupon. Using endorsements, bills of exchange, and return these instruments to one of the SARS office tasked to provide us with our exemptions and payment services. But we are never given any instructions about any of this, never told how to endorse these instruments for payment, nor where to send them afterwards until you came across the Bills of Exchange on Gift of Truth website. So it's a brilliant, no one in the world is given any Bills of Exchange website like that. So that's to cover your exemption. An exemption means Bills of Exchange. So the government provided remedy, but criminally neglected to provide reasonable public access to it. No instructions were published and no address given. It's time for South Africans, including public employees, to stand up and demand the establishment of debt redemption service centers that are competent to process debts, redemption claims, bills of exchange, and set-offs. So folks, I think I told you last week, the reason we're doing the whole security agreement is because I'm trying everything in our power, not me alone. There's a whole group of us I've got it right today, I can tell you that. And we can do this process of setting a lien, a bond, to claim the assets back for each man, but we can do one for the whole country. And once we've got that number, everybody signs a bills of exchange to pay off your debts with banks and everything. But you've got to put the bond number on there. And that's what we're in the process of doing. I've nagged for 2 years now for someone, but I realize I must do it. So we must do it in Jural Assembly. So we're not making the money that all these other groups have learned from us, and they're charging people a lot of money for trusts. And sure, I've seen some of the charges. Yo, it's expensive. You'd be better off learning it yourself, standing on here, giving us a few donations, and getting groups together where you all work together. So Aubrey's done a pretty good job, but Aubrey is doing bills of exchange as the debtor, and that isn't so cool, folks. You got to learn how to do your security agreement, and unfortunately, you're going to be paying tuppence to us so I can do workshops over and above the public lessons so that you can all do this. I'm on my last document, but for everybody who can afford it, start trying to get your vault copy of your birth certificates. It's going to take months. If you pay somebody, I got to quote 1,700 to do the full process of the birth certificate, and you get delivered it into your hand, apostilled with ribbons and everything, and that's what you're going to need for your exemption. So that's the process I want to be able to teach everybody to do. And we're going to be offering it up pretty soon. And the first process of that process is to do your bills, is to do your copyright agreement. The copyright agreement we're going to do in the first workshop has got charges for everything. So for instance, say somebody sends you a tax bill in your capital letter name. You say, okay, that's cool, but you're going to be paying me $500,000 for using my name, because that's the value it is. So you've now put yourself as holder in due course with your copyright agreement. To notify anybody who's done your emancipation document, there is already a copyright agreement in there. So all of you behind your capital letter name, put the copyright circle at the end. Better to write it in by hand, but you can sneak it in there under the copyright. I do, because I don't have time to remember it all. But you can put your copyright quite safely behind your all caps name once you've done your emancipation and got off the voters roll. So you are thereby announcing that you are a copyright transmitting utility with a value. You're a vessel with a value. You're owed a fortune. So you have an exemption because you have no money. As I've said at the top, there is no real money in the system. So there is a constitutional prohibition against paper money because it's fraud. Every paper note you're using is fraud. Not as much the coins, even though it's a fiat currency. It still has value. That paper's got, it's actually, if you use it, it turns you into a fraudster. You are aiding and abetting in fraud by using their money. A country, a state, has to have a name, people, boundaries, and money. If one of those elements is missing, there is no country. If Natal has no people, it is not a state or a province. If it has no geographic boundaries, it is not a state or a province. Can you see what they're doing to our boundaries? They're dropping them all. If it has no money, it is not a state or a province. So those are the elements that make up a country. You also can't have a country without a post office. There is no such thing as a country without a post office. So they can't get rid of the post office. They're busy doing something else like corporatizing it, which is also illegal. Look at the cause and effect, why there is no money in circulation. Who has authority to demand the money be given to the Federal Reserve banks by 1920-31? The money is in trust for the people in the country in the RSA Public Sovereign Trust. And that is where your living man has access to, is that RSA Public Sovereign Trust, which the government has got their hand fully into, not so much the government as the crown. And those bloody elites sitting up there drinking tea, our tax is just an interest payment. All inflation is an organized taxation. For anyone who wants to do go deeper, all inflation is an organized taxation event. So this whole inflation story is a taxation, and tax is illegal. So you can see on the one side, there's the substance. On the right side, sorry, on the left side, looking at it, is people, gold, silver, constructive trust, necessary when fraud is involved. Fiction is the persons, you're the man on the one side and you're persons on the other side. So the whole creation of the birth certificate is the creation of a person, which is a corporation. It's got paper, fictional money, it's got applications and registrations. And there in the middle is the trust corpus where the Vatican runs the show, and he gives us a job because the Vatican doesn't do their job. They employ our governments to do the jobs. So our governments are foreign governments on South African soil, even Ramaphosa. So you can see the Secretary of the Treasury has grabbed hold of a whole public, the RSA Sovereign Public Trust sits on the right hand, sits on the left-hand side here, substance, on the right-hand side for standing there. That's the sovereign trust. And here, these dirty hands of the Secretary of the Treasury, John Henry Doe is the beneficiary, but they turn you into the trustee for every transaction they do, and they steal all of your money. So because you cannot pay, he who has the gold pays the bill. So now you can see, once you've put a lien onto your all capital birth certificate name, the bond, the slave bond that they put on your name has a value, and it's a lot, but it's not in monetary terms. It's in you being able to discharge your bill through exemption. That was what they offered. So don't think you're going to go and draw money out of that account, because there isn't any in it. It's just value. So every time they dig up gold, it's got to go into that sovereign trust. What you're going to do, you've emancipated, but now you're going to put a bond on top of their bond. You're going to nullify their slave bond, and you're going to create the free man's bond and claim your assets back out of the public trust. The public trust, as I've said to you, this RSA Public Sovereign Land Trust, is 55 million little trusts inside of this trust. That's the value of the country, is us. Without us, there's no money. Without us, there's no government. You can't pay. So they have to pay the bills, but you have to know how to do it. So you are exempt. He who demands payment knows, or should know, there is no money. You are not expected to pay. You are living in a prepaid system. We must learn to use it. Let's go down. So here we come with the famous, my favorite title in common law at the moment is the revocation of elections to pay tax. The revocation, to revoke, means to take away my offer to assist the country by paying taxes. It's voluntary. So I'm saying I'm revoking my voluntary election to be a taxpayer any longer, because I've realized you're not using it what you said you were using it for. So I'm taking it back. That's what this process is. So here is a template one can adjust and use. I think this was my 7th template that may eventually work. But I've done all these other things before, so I'm going to share them. We'll give you a workshop, a one-day one on this, so that you can do the whole process to preserve yourself. If you're in real trouble, just go ahead and do this one. But I would advise to cover your butt, and you can see what we're going to do. How I did it was, I have done DOME, we can change that spelling in. We've DOME the full administrative process to accomplish this last notice. It's there where it says here is template. One can adjust just below revocation of election to pay tax. We've done the full administration. Yeah, there. Yep, just alter that later. So I have done the full administrative process to accomplish this last notice. Remember, Zoom lesson 5 is all the templates you need for your administrative process to know how to put it onto the which side, all your names and addresses, how to end the letter, how to send it, and the 3 and 4 letter process. So the first things, we'll also offer these templates up in the workshop. Send a letter to Ramaphosa appointing him as your fiduciary, as your trustee with fines and penalties if anyone harms you. So the copyright agreement's got all those penalties and fines. But what I did is, because Cyril Ramaphosa is the president, in all capital, is the acting president, and he's the president in smaller letters. He's got 2 offices. I have heard the characters sitting in government that hold those 2 offices, the registrar of deeds is the acting registrar and the registrar. And when you get a court summons or anything with them, they use both, so that he can endorse anything that you sign and turn it into a crown property. So I believe that those characters that play the both roles, they are emancipated. They can't function as a citizen of South Africa. They've revoked their citizenship to be able to function in this fraudulent, Bugsy Malone criminal syndicate. Here is a template one can adjust and use once you have understood it. So send a letter to Ramaphosa appointing him as your fiduciary, as your trustee with fines and penalties if anyone harms you. And if so, you can hold him accountable. So you attach the RSA Inc. Edgar search. I put it into the bottom for you. You're going to show them that you're just another company like McDonald's and are not bound by your nonsense. He will not answer, so you will get a notice back if you send it by email. You get an automatic notice back from Ramaphosa saying he's accepted it. That's all you need to know. He will not answer, so you send him a default judgment and a estoppel deed. So none of them answer, and in your process on Zoom 5 is all of those letters. And you can even send him charges and put liens on him if you want. So you use this estoppel deed to send to SARS with this notice below. Use the SARS done 7 Brad Street search below. Use Zoom 5 to see the 3 or 4 letter administrative process to achieve it with efficiency. Michelle's put the link in for the BitChute for that lesson. Use the post office registered mail delivery to door, as they do not collect from the post office anymore. SARS, there are too many people doing it. So I did it for somebody else and I got it back because we didn't send it. I think the envelope to door, and you can nominate that a specific signature. So that would mean the treasurer, commissioner, or his secretary could sign it. And that's how I did it. So here's the template, beautifully put out for you. And with his email address, which took us a year and a half, up to 2 years to get. So just to let you know, it took us 2 years just to get his email address. And these are the lessons that you're coming in on. So please pass us some donations. We need them for the people that are mobilizing in our country. And we're trying to finance them all to move around and save our country. And folks, I don't care what anyone says. Our original people in our country are allodial. So they own the land. It doesn't matter what crown puts the nonsense on theirs. They're the allodial rightful owners of South Africa. We are the natives by nativity because we're born on the land of South Africa. So we're entitled to allodial land as well. But if you go back in history, the land was stolen from the allodial original people of South Africa. And don't be fooled, the Boers bought their land from the tribes, and the tribes happily made us and the Boers neighbors. So, and everybody loved each other. Everybody loved that, what was that Afrikaner, Piet Retief. If you read the true stories of his things with the tribes, it brings tears to your eyes. There was a great love between all of us. So don't be fooled, people, by this race narrative. Here we go back to the template. I'm going to go through it very fast. This is in red over here. You leave this part in red. This is probably one of the most powerful lines that you'll ever get given to return your notices from. So return service, no UCC contract. Remember, I said your birth certificate is a UCC contract trust. And so the UCC contract trust is under maritime salvage laws, and no territorial office is your voter's roll, which turns you into a municipal, military, South African British subject. Like literally, that's what you are. Wait till you find out what a taxpayer is. So referral, mine was an audit case. So I had a notice in my hands that I used in response and reply. I'm sure most of you will. Right now, folks, there are a few people who are attempting to do it. If you're employed, it gets obviously very difficult because you're dealing with the bosses of companies and things, and they're not ready to play the game. So, but there are means and ways of doing it. I think, Ash, I don't know how far you've got with it, but we'll maybe ask you later. So the referral for audit, the case, you know, they give you a case number. Received by email on the 15th of August, that's my, I've changed all my dates and numbers and things to Ward Wetter in his personal capacity. Please note, in his personal capacity or his private capacity, you can put liens and bonds onto individual people working for government, and you can take their houses. I'm not kidding, but I'm not interested in going there. There's not enough time, and I don't really want to hurt them. So without malice aforethought, please take notice that I herewith decline any offer to mischaracterize me as a taxpayer or a taxpayer. See, here it goes again. Everything is double. Everything is double speak. The addressee is not here. I deny occupying the office of a taxpayer, as it is a foreign municipal corporation known as a UCC contract trust at your birth certificate, which is strictly denied. Further, I'm not an employee of the Republic of South Africa. You are treated as an employee as though you're employed. The corporation or government of the Republic of South Africa Corporation or any agent thereof, local government and or municipal citizen and SA Department of Trade and Commerce or SA Department of Transport, to my knowledge, I do not have any lawful legal contracts with any of these above named entities agreeing to be a corporate citizen of any corporation today. So as we all know, you didn't know. Now you're saying, oh, okay, we've checked out what you're doing now, because a statute must be construed to be in harmony with the common law. That's their law, by the way, and not as an obligation of an unrevealed commercial agreement once the remedy is exercised. Every time, if you're going to use this template, folks, please, it's not difficult. Don't just send this thing. Know what the UCC 1207/1308. You're going to be shocked, because once you know this has put you into the common law. You've chosen remedy and you've announced that you're a living man. That's the power of that. A lot of people in this country say, oh, the UCC doesn't apply to us. It is the global law of commerce. There is no other law. It's hidden. It covered up the law merchant that I spoke about, that's 80,000 years old. So unless there is a clear legislative intent to abrogate the common law, the code cannot be read to preclude common law action. The common law is the real law of the supreme law of the land. The codes, rules, regulations, policy, and statutes are not the law. So that's the US Supreme Court case. All codes, rules, and regulations are for government authorities only, no human creators in accordance with God's law. All codes, rules, and regulations are unconstitutional and lacking due process. There's another one I put in. I use the Supreme Court ones because we don't have them in our country, and our Bill of Rights allows us to do that. But don't pack a whole lot of American things onto court cases. They're not interested. The state citizen is immune from any and all government attacks and procedures absent contract. That's another court case. There, every man is independent of all laws except those prescribed by nature. He is not bound by any institutions formed by his fellow man without his consent. It's a very famous court citation, that one. And then let's move down. This is even more famous. I use it on everything. Inasmuch as every government is an artificial person, an abstract, and a creature of the mind only. A government can interface only with other artificial persons. The imaginary, having neither actuality or substance, is foreclosed from creating and attaining parity with the tangible, anything you can touch. The legal manifestation of this is that no government, as well as any law agency aspect court, can concern itself with anything other than corporate artificial persons and the contracts between them. The individual may stand upon his constitutional rights as a citizen. He is, as a citizen, he's entitled to carry on his private business in his own way. Folks, that word citizen there in all smalls is the correct way of saying you're a citizen of the unincorporated Republic of South Africa, but because it's so bastardized, we use state first national, South African nationals. Once you've emancipated, you become a South African national, first national. He is entitled to carry on his private business in his own way. His power to contract is unlimited. He owes no duty to the state or to his neighbors to divulge his business or to open his door to an investigation so far as it may tend to incriminate him. He owes no such duty to the state, since he receives nothing therefrom beyond the protection of his life and property, which they don't do anyway. They're stealing it all. His rights are such as existed by the law of the land, long antecedent to the organization of any state, and can only be taken from him by due process of law, and in accordance with the Constitution. Among this, his rights are a refusal to incriminate himself and the immunity of himself and his property from arrest or seizure. So you can see that's another court citation. As you are aware, one's name is one's property. It is your business. Your capital name now is your official business. For one's name to enjoy sui juris status, that's over the age of 21, and you've claimed back your life, you've emancipated, that name must be free of explicit legal disabilities resulting from some contract, indenture, or commercial agreement, which is held in due course by a citizen corporation or by an agency of government. They steal your holder in due course. Please find attached the Dun & Bradstreet Company listing for South African Revenue Services, SARS. You expose that they're just a stupid old bloody company. Please forward me the proof of the SARS contract with me, Betty Ann, House of Boop, the woman, as a corporate citizen. So show me the proof that I'm one, which establishes an obligation on me to be a taxpayer. No contract means no obligation. Further, take notice that I do not volunteer to be a taxpayer. This fact was already communicated to your office in writing. You guys must not write word for word from our templates, please. You've got to put in your own stuff and get a little creative and look things up. It's the only way you're going to learn, is when you actually physically do it. The law of contracts requires these following amendments. That's your Zoom 5. I'm not going to go through it. I've exercised my remedy provided for me in every single fraudulent policy, statutes, and laws is the hidden remedy. So that makes us a problem. So the remedy is provided for me in the Universal Code, Article 207.138. As I've said, that is the freedom from your straw man. You own the straw man, whereby I reserve my common law right not to be bound by nor compelled to perform under any contract, commercial agreement, bankruptcy that I have not entered into knowingly, voluntarily, and intentionally. That reservation serves notice upon all of the administrative agencies of government, federal, state, local, that I do not and will not accept the liability associated with the compelled benefit of any unrevealed contract, commercial agreement, or bankruptcy. I do not understand. I deny that I stand under your authority. One of your employees, apparently working under your specific direction, has sent me a notice, offered to audit me for some alleged tax. I have attached a copy for you to read for yourself. I am returning this request without dishonor because I deny that I have any tax liability. This presentment by you through one of your agents indicates an attempt by you acting in concert to commit constructive fraud. So there you go, the constructive fraud, UCC 3305. Please go there and look at it, because the UCC is not very complex once you go. It's going to look strange in the beginning. It's not a very big document, but it's the laws of contract, and you have to stick to them. They're trying to induce me to accept it for the benefit of the South African Revenue Services, Inc., or its principals, because they're taking it. They're done. Ward Wetter, you are required as a public servant to personally or to direct your agent to please send me a copy of the instrument containing my signature that obliges me to perform to your demand under agreement as set forth in my examination. Mr. Vetter, you are further required to direct your agent to send me a copy of any negotiable instruments as required by the UCC 3805, which you claim I have signed, making the South African Revenue Services, Inc. a holder in due course. You see, so you are the holder in due course while you're holding that instrument. They then fraud you into taking the value of that instrument for themselves. And then they basically, by you signing it and returning it, and I mean, by you paying the bill, you've given them that bill for them to take out of your account for them to spend. So you've made them hold in due course with the right of presentment and demand. I also require Vetter to disclose who your principal is pursuant to this case. Is it the Federal Reserve System, the International Monetary Fund, Agency for International Development, or the Treasury? This letter took me 2.5 weeks because I had to study everything about the UCC before I sent this letter, because this was my 5th one. And this was possibly more than just about a year ago, and I haven't heard from them. They were coming at me hard. So folks, even if you send this letter, you can just resend and update it. I should have written what I'm going to actually, I'll add a note somewhere. I'll try to show you what you do, because you keep sending it back. You just change the date on the document and you send the same letter back. And your 3rd time, you've done your duty as far as the UCC goes and the administrative process. You know, send your first one by post. It's going to cost you 75 Rand to get it to his door. And then after that, you can send emails. That's what I did. Best to make record. I did e-evidence emails. I don't like them much. I prefer post, but it's getting difficult. You are further required to invite your agent to send me a copy of any negotiable instruments. There you go, which you claim I have signed, making the South African Revenue Service in hold in due course. I also require Vetter to disclose who your principal is. In the event that you do not have the above required contractual documents, you yourself or your agent acting on your behalf shall advise me in writing that any further investigation has established that I am not a taxpayer under SARS acts, regulations, or codes, and that no further correspondence to me will be issued. Remembering there's nothing in any tax act thing that there's a living man or woman that pays tax. So when you do the workshop with us, you'll get that template too. But they understand this language better. but I think once you say there is no living man that has to pay a tax, which is true, they keep coming at you. This letter made them go away, and it's because I sweated over understanding the UCC to the best of my knowledge. I just use it like a dictionary. So for instance, say you have a bit of this, you can go into holder in due course, punch UCC holder in due course, and all of this will come up. I also require Woodweta to disclose who your principal is. Sorry, there we go. Woodweta, you and your agent hereby put on notice. I'm not a resident of the RSA Inc. Any of its possessions, territories, or enclaves scattered across the South African Republic. Therefore, it is my legal determination that your presentment is deemed to be under a fraudulent, unconscionable contract as outlined in the UCC 2302. As I've said, the entire system works under the UCC. The whole world is under the Universal Commercial Code. So there's your maxim. Legality is not reality. That was pudding for him. You have 10 days from the date. So this is your estoppel demand. This statement at the bottom has turned your document into an affidavit. The entire process in the world does not function without affidavits, which is how the monetary system works, is through you swearing oaths. So the cause will be yours and would make null and void of all your actions from the beginning. In addition, according to the UCC 3505, brackets 2, please look these things up. And understanding your failure to comply promptly with this information will invalidate the request for audit you have made to me in your letter. Da, 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 da. Very truly and sincerely. That's a very truly and sincerely one I put there. Autograph and seal without prejudice, and there you go. There's the correct way. Folks, BT, on our original templates, there were always 2 signatures. I go for 3 if it's easy for you to find. You see that little stamp on the right-hand side there? I've put that in there for you guys. Cut and paste it and use it on your documents if you have emancipated. Because the UCC 1308 is declaring your common law status. And your secured party creditor, we'll show you on that one. For South Africa, it's a bit different now, but you can use that. So let's move down. So there, folks, is the template in a nutshell. Now I'm going to touch on bills of exchange for the exemption side of it. I particularly put this here to show you that if you're serious about doing your bills of exchange, you will definitely do our secured party creditor system with us, and you will definitely, before you go gallantly out there doing bills of exchange, you must copyright your name at least, but you need to do the secured party creditor, and it's advisable. It's going to take you up to 3 months to achieve, but the Treasury gets it, and every single man and woman that you ever pay with the bills of exchange will have your bond number. To have a rubber stamp made with the correct endorsement from our gift of truth on it is so valuable, because when you understand trusts, which is what the whole world is run under, we're going to get to that next week, we're starting trusts. You will understand that having a rubber stamp is the intention. You have always intended, and you know, and now they get nervous of a rubber stamp, because they're saying, oh, this guy's done his documents, you know, he's done his stuff. So we better discharge this one. So what is a bill of exchange? It's an unconditional order in writing addressed by one person to another person, signed by the person giving it. So a true bill has to have a wet ink signature on it. It's got to have a signature on it, otherwise it's not a bill. So you are getting, we don't get statements, we get statements. So when you get a statement in the post from your municipality, it's already been paid out of your public trust. It's not a true bill. So in your lesson Zoom 5, it gives you the explanation of true bills. There's address to pay, and you can use the whole, you're going to use it. You can see I did it in the tax document, what makes up a proper contract. Most of them are lacking. So it is addressed to, so a bill of exchange is to address, to pay on demand or at fixed and determinable future time a sum certain in money, to order, or to bear, certain in money to order, which is when they give it to the green block, to your living man, they're ordering, they're asking you to just to set off or give them some money. They're ordering some money from you. Or to bearer, sometimes called a trade acceptance, also called a letter of exchange, which is the Black's Law Fourth Dictionary. This whole thing here is Black's Fourth Law Dictionary. Can I get into trouble using a bill of exchange? You can get into trouble crossing the street. There are rules for crossing the street and rules for using bills of exchange. You have to stake your claim because you are of age, the sui juris. If you have done the emancipation process, you are halfway home to the land of the living and your bills of exchange. This is where you guys doing bills of exchange. You guys haven't done the full story, and Abri needs to do this other process with you guys because it's going to carry on being a struggle because you haven't done the full process. So your accepted for value process was set up in the 1930s as part of the Great Fraud. I'm explaining to you, can you get into trouble for a bills of exchange? So this is the explanation. Its actual technical name is mutual offset credit exchange. That's what it's actually called. What this involves is an exchange of debts. You owe me 10 Rand, but I owe you 5. So we swap debts, and at the end of the day, you only owe me 5 Rand. It's basically what it is. So that system ended except by implied succession contract. Now, those are when they end things and there's a period of time where, and they can't really end it because they didn't give you a remedy. They didn't give you another form of payment, and you've still got dead currency. There's no money in the world. But there are exceptions, and then the one or two that will go through for the ones that are doing it, it's by this system of by implied succession contract. That is, the organizations that acquired the underlying assets and stepped in to provide the services still got tagged to honor an accepted for value process because they had an implied responsibility to continue to provide the same deal as remedy. Otherwise, the whole situation is patently illegal and inequitable. So they've basically taken, you haven't furnished your documents that you're a creditor in the system. So all of you doing them under ABRI, you're doing them as the debtor and you're discharging the bills, which means it's still going to have to get paid in the future. Where when you do your bond on your birth certificate, you become a creditor in the system. And you have your lien and your bond number. So if anybody, for instance, once you've done your secured party creditor, it's not for the faint-hearted. It's not as easy as emancipation, but once you've understood it and got the hang of it, it's worth plowing through, let me tell you, because you're setting the next generation free as well by this. But it's not for the faint-hearted, as I've said, and you need to get your birth certificate, which is the bond. You then say the taxman says, oh, I'm going to come and touch your car. And you're going to say, oh, okay, but I've got a bond on my name. So I'm a secured party creditor because you're working in a bankrupt situation. So if you want the bill from me, you're going to have to first settle the 500 million Rand bond I put on my name. And so they can't attach your house. They can't attach anything once you've got the bond. You've got a bond to the value of up to 500 million Rand. And we made it high because we don't know if we're going to go like Zimbabwe. And that notice of your security goes to anyone and everyone that you will be paying bills to. So that is the organizations that acquire the underlying assets and stepped in to provide the services, still got tagged to honor A4B processes because they had an implied responsibility to continue to provide the same deal. So between the latest RSA Inc. bankruptcy and now, some A4V accepted for value processes were accepted and worked on a quid pro quo basis. They'll let that one through, maybe that one, no, we'll chop this one down. However, all that stopped when both the municipal and territorial organizations went bankrupt as well. And the bankruptcy trustees appointed by the big banks refused to pay up, and it all got dumped back on the IMF functioning as the treasury. That's a tiny bit of history. I'm putting everything in a nutshell, you guys, so that you can start moving, because we've got to start moving. So you cannot bring an accepted for value against a bankrupt entity. This is in red for a very good reason, folks. So this is where you guys can still get into trouble. Don't think that you can't. So know what you're doing with your bills of exchange. I think Avery's quite good at backing up, but Avery needs to start on the on the secured party creditor to actually get this whole thing running so that we can set up redemption houses. Redemption houses are, say we've got a squatter camp and these people are on the bones of their bums with electricity and they don't know how to read and write. You set up an office inside that thing and they bring you the electricity bills and you discharge them. That's what a redemption house is. That's how it's supposed to run in our country. The remedy is all around us. It's us who've just been listening to these. We've been acting like slaves. We've got it tattooed in our brains through narratives and years of indoctrination and lies. And so you can't bring an accepted for value against a bankrupt entity. It's against the law. Even if they owe you, and even if you owe them, the bankruptcy locks down their assets, including their credits. And so far as bankruptcy trustees are concerned, you are just a debtor, not necessarily owed anything. So when you bring forward a claim against the bankrupts, they say you are acting in contempt and asserting a fraudulent interest against a poor little old bankrupt entity that is owed all the protections of the court, which is how they've set the system up. So even though there was sporadic success presenting accepted for value claims prior to the bankruptcies, and some, as I've explained above, why they let some through, and somewhat still some successes because of the need to provide remedy or face criminal charges. That's them facing criminal charges, because you can actually take them. There is no money to pay a tax bill. So what is suggested and provided for is not and has never been an accepted for value process that we do here. It looks like one, but it is in fact an insurance claim process, not an accepted for value mutual offset credit exchange. This is to set the cards straight for people doing bills of exchange. And why you're all struggling so much, I'm not saying it's not going to be a struggle for the first ones who do the set-offs and the bonds. But before this year is up, and please pray, folks, all of you, that I get this right so I can do it so that we can do it for the whole country. Someone's done it in America, so everyone who knows about it uses it. And most of the bills are going through. So we have to claim all our assets. Sorry, for anyone who's in finance and in commercial and is understanding everything I'm doing, and all of yours who've done bills of exchange, please consider doing the secured party creditor process, because it's going to set the stage for everyone. You could even open up a redemption house. Redemption houses charge 10% of everything that you discharge. It's very much like an attorney's trust account. It's not very different. So we have to claim all our assets of the bankrupt state, including those assets that are being held in trust by these organizations, supposedly for us, which we know it isn't. And we exercise our guarantees under the Lieber Code and the Hague Conventions that require that we are indemnified against loss or damage. That's your birth certificate claim. By establishing a private registered indemnity bond, which is the bond they've got on our birth certificate, we're going to privately register an indemnity bond, which is an agreement between the straw man and your living man. And the living man says, okay, now I've seen the system. I'm going to appoint you straw man, and I'm going to give you the power of attorney to discharge all your bills and protect me and hold me harmless to this whole system. Remember, I told you that when they send a tax bill or any bill, It's an offer to contract to the living man. Now, most of the guys doing bills of exchange aren't following that process. It's an offer to the living man to ask the straw man, the dead man, to bring in some form of asset for them so that they can fix the road for you. And it can't come out of anything that isn't of any value. It's got to come out of the South African Public Sovereign Trust, of which you have your Setuki trust in there. And you using your little trust, which is your ID number. Your ID number with no gaps is your bank account to the Sovereign Trust, which is where all the assets, and there's lots, we all know there's lots still in South Africa, and there's lots of gold, and there's lots of minerals still. Just keep the crown out of our mineral holes is our big problem. We're starting on that right now. It's very interesting. It's not as difficult as we think. So we have to claim all our assets of the bankrupt state, including those assets. Now think about it. When someone goes into bankruptcy, something puts a hold on those assets. But there's still movement between debtors and creditors. So it's the insurance guy that has to make sure who gets the money and gets paid, the debtor or the creditor. So that's why you're not going to claim against the South African corporation. You're going to claim against the insurance company that is the insurer. So every single government employee who isn't a bar member has to have an insurance bond for them to be able to work for the government. And that's, you can also make claims against those personal insurances. So being held by the organization supposed to be private registered indemnity bond, okay, to cover our actual assets and our person. Our names, property is fiction, land is real. Property is the description of your license. Property is the description of your land. It's the description of your birth certificate. It's not the birth certificate. So you can see they only convey property in the system. They're not, and when they say expropriation of all property in South Africa without compensation, that means the title, the paper, nothing else. But we believe it to be our land, so we leave the land. That's how stupid we've got. You can take the paper and burn it, and then there's nothing to claim. So think of it as an insurance policy with an insurance policy number that is lodged in their system. And when you make a proper claim against it by accepting their court order, the bill, and signing off on it, they have to provide the insurance to cover the loss and balance the books. So now you can start seeing that's called a set-off. So every time you use the process properly and you're a creditor, which is the creditor, secured creditor, you are discharging the public debt. For all of you, let's think about it. Our public debt is running at 2.4 trillion rand. But we all know when you've got to balance a book, if there's a debt of 4 trillion rand, then there's a credit of 4 trillion rand. Otherwise, the books aren't balancing. So that's the biggest lie of all, because they work with debt. It's really pretty simple. Through the process of getting to this point has been anything but simple or straightforward. But once you understand it, it's actually quite simple. I know a lot of you are still feeling like you're in the washing machine, but don't worry. We're going to get you into the tumble dryer and you're going to come out all nicely ironed out, and you're going to know what to do and help everybody else. In order to do this properly, the person making the claim must be operating as a natural person. So they use something called a natural person, which they kind of make as a living man, and have their ducks in order with a recorded claim to their birthright, identity, and political status, and testament of two witnessing proving that they are the man or woman born in such and such a place to such and such parents, etc. I highly recommend notarizing this process, which is the indemnity government bond. I mean, the bond we're going to put on your name. So the indemnity bond works despite the bankruptcy and hooks the underwriters, the insurance companies, instead of the bankrupt organizations, which clears up the whole conundrum created by their bankruptcies and gives people remedy that is simpler and easier to enforce the beginning. This is put in here as a gift to you, so you don't have to think. Look at how and what your signature means. So this is put in here so that you can learn different ways to sign different citations or whatever you're doing with your, see, limited rights grantor. The grantor of the state is you have to have assets to grant it. So this gives you the information. Okay, let's move down. So you can use that. You can cut and paste and set your signatures up. Here's your Dun & Bradstreet. Okay, it's just my name's off there. There's the Dun & Bradstreet for you. You can go onto the website and download one yourself. I think that's it.